Can we truly claim to be independent when the hospitals that we rely on were mostly built in the colonial period? Can we truly claim to be independent when most of our roads, all of them, were built with colonial taxpayers' funds? I was contemplating how to start my presentation to you this morning, and I decided to start at the beginning. And for me, 1865 is really the beginning of Jamaica. 1865 is the year of the Morant Bay Rebellion, a time of crisis for Jamaica, several. It was inevitable based upon the conditions that existed in Jamaica, that there would be a collision between the newly freed people of 30 years and the ruling class of Jamaica. Because the ruling class still had not gotten in their minds that they now have a country to build. They were still acting as if they were trying to defend a plantation. And by then, of course, the plantation was no longer a central economic source for the British Empire. Sugar was not king anymore. And indeed, the industrial base in the United Kingdom really saw the plantation as a drag on its own economic development because of the huge subsidies, effectively, that the plantations were getting because of the preferential treatment of sugar. So they really wanted the plantations to be done with and slavery to be done with. But, you know, Jamaica was, in essence, though still a colony, was being independently governed in a way because it had its own assembly, an assembly of planters. And so after the Morant Bay Rebellion was brutally suppressed, over 300 persons recorded as being killed by the state, the British government did something, because the way we interpret history, clearly from the lens of being enslaved and oppressed, but the British government put in place a royal commission to review the conditions as to why this thing happened. Why was there this rebellion and why was there a massacre? And the commission came up with several things, right? The commission concluded that the conditions under which Jamaicans were living were unacceptable. There was high level of poverty, underdeveloped infrastructure, lack of education, lack of access to justice, and limited access to land. Sounds familiar? Of course, the governor who did the atrocities was brought back to the United Kingdom. He was brought before the court. He was prosecuted, but he was not arrested and charged. In fact, it's a very interesting history. But I think the British government was embarrassed by what took place. And they sent a new governor, John Peter Grant, and he's largely viewed as the Reconstruction governor. And what happened as a result of the attempt to reconstruct Jamaica, like what we're trying to do now, after a crisis, is that they changed how Jamaica was administered. That was the first thing. So the National Assembly of Jamaica, the Parliament of Jamaica, voted to abolish themselves, and Jamaica became administered from the United Kingdom as a crown colony. And so the governor had quite a bit of authority to do things. And in order to properly administer Jamaica, they reduced the number of parishes from 23 to 14. That's why we have 14 parishes today. They established a local government. They established a local constabulary. They put in place a health system, a court system. They developed ports. But one of the things that they did was to develop Jamaica's infrastructure. The British government decided that they would spend on developing infrastructure in the Jamaican colony. And that, I'm yet to be corrected, I stand to be corrected, would be probably the largest investment in Jamaica's infrastructure, if you were to compare it in constant dollar terms, if you could. It was out of that program that came things like the Spanish Town Hospital. Recently, I opened the restored bridge between the parishes of Trelawney and Manchester, the Troy Bridge. The Troy Bridge was built out of that program. The colonial government went on a massive road building program to connect all the little villages all over Jamaica. As a result of that program of infrastructure, Jamaica became the country with the second most dense road per square kilometer in the world. Only Japan had more roads per square kilometer than us. I mean, that has changed over the last 20 years, but we went on a massive infrastructure program. When last did we do this? Which other time in our history did our government decide that we're going to take on the massive infrastructure development of the country in a coordinated way right across government? You know, we claim our independence, but we're not appreciating what it means to be independent. We're afraid of ourselves. We're afraid of big things. And what I would like to break in the minds of everyone who's gathered here is this notion that we can't do big things. We have to shake that off. We can do big things. And that is what we are attempting to do now. So what is clear is that crisis brings opportunity. So after 1865, an opportunity was created. And that is what has essentially set the administrative structure of Jamaica right now that we have. Is there need for improvement and change and doing something different? Of course there is. Can we truly claim to be independent when the hospitals that we rely on were mostly built in the colonial period? Can we truly claim to be independent when most of our roads, all of them were built with colonial taxpayers' funds? When our water systems were built under the colonial period. Downtown Kingston, the entire sewage was built in the colonial period. We can't claim our independence if we don't at some point exercise it and build things that we can say to the generations to follow, yeah, we built this. Of course, we would have started with the highway, the cross-parish highways. I think we can claim those. Some of the water systems, we can claim those. But we need to do much more now. So that's a kind of framework that I want you to have in your mind and to establish it. What is the deep driving mission to get this done?
Hello Jamaica, and welcome to another one of my YouTube video. I decided to share this clip with you to encourage you to never be afraid of change and never be too quick to jump to conclusions. Never be afraid of change. As you may see in the news, there are changes to come where, different form of buildings, smart buildings and stuff like that will be built. Once upon a time, Jamaica used to be beautiful. Things used to be different. But things got old and, broken down. Here comes a prime minister like Prime Minister Andrew Holness, Mr. Andrew Holness, who has decided to do an upgrade on Jamaica. It's like doing an upgrade on a home. And there's nothing wrong with that. So don't listen to the people who will tell you that, he's trying to change Jamaica, or he's trying to cut out the poor people and all these nonsense. Cut out the poor people and send them where? What I can say to you is not to be relaxed. A lot of people may want to just sit back and relax and don't do anything, and so they would rather things just be dropped into their hands. Well, in that aspect, you may fall into the poor people category. If you don't want to be poor, then you must get up and start a business such as farming. Farming is a very good form of business. My mother used to do some farming, and what she used to do was to pay men to plant, say, coconut trees or banana trees or stuff like that on our property. And so it's either you do it or you let somebody do it for you, right? We had lots of oranges on our property. And I remember at 1 or 2 points, my mother and father, I don't know, they worked out some form of agreement or something with a orange juice company. And, the trucks came to the house. And I remember them bucketing the oranges or however they did it. I was a child, so I don't remember exactly, but I think I remember them bucketing. But, however the oranges were measured out, my parents were able to sell those oranges to the orange juice company, right? So I say this to say to you, Jamaica, one thing that you could do in Jamaica is to do farming. And one thing that I could always tell someone to do is to plant something like mangoes. And, people love mangoes. Tourists love mangoes. Plant the mangoes, East Indian mango, and sell them. Go into an area where you know that you will be able to make money and sell these mangoes to the people that you know will buy them. You know what I mean? The areas that you know people will buy the mangoes from you. So plant stuff that you can resell. So you don't want to fall into the category of being poor. And being poor in Jamaica is just sitting there and not doing anything, because I feel as if you can do anything in Jamaica to make money. My mother used to do lots of different things. She sewed to purchase her home. She cooked. She had a restaurant. She would cook and she would go to the goat market and sell to the people that sell the goats and the cows. She had a shop. She had a restaurant at the shop. She would cook food and sell to the taxi drivers that would frequent our area. And she did many other things. And she did, volunteering for the church, where she would cook for the churches, the New Testament churches that came to our church for church rallies or crusades. And excuse me, she was never paid, but she enjoyed what she did. So I basically am just saying this to say that, you don't have to be poor. So starting over in Jamaica with whatever the Prime Minister is trying to start over with, do not allow anyone to make you think that the Jamaican government is trying to sell you out. If anything, the Jamaican government is trying to make you rich. At least that's how I would look at it. Please like my video, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell and choose all so that you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. And please leave it in the comment where you are listening from, and also what are your thoughts on what the Prime Minister have just stated and where Jamaica is going. Have a blessed day.